A lot of essentially military, and we will bring in the military if it's needed, by the way. We're going to have National Guard. But Pete Hegseth will tell you about it. We will bring in the military if needed. People say, oh, that's so terrible. He's going to bring in. It's been used many times over the years.
All right, folks, we have some breaking news, which is both authoritarian and ominous. As we speak, Donald Trump is engaging in a disastrous press conference in which he has announced that he is bringing the D.C. Metropolitan Police under his control. He is asserting federal control over Washington, D.C., and deploying the National Guard and threatening to deploy active duty U.S. troops if need be, all under the pretext of fighting crime in Washington, D.C., even though crime in D.C. has fallen and continues to fall without federal intervention. And all of this is really just Trump's latest war on what he calls radical left, far left cities like Los Angeles. And now he's doing it to Washington, D.C. And he's even hinting that there will be more cities that he targets in the future. And as this goes on, his own FBI director actually steps up and kind of contradicts the whole thing. It's a total shit show, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play. Again, as we speak, this press conference is going on. I'm not sure if Trump's going to take questions from people. He may do so. But here are some key clips that I want you to see. It's really stunning, authoritarian, insane stuff.
And we're here for a very serious purpose, Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. And you people are victims of it, too, you know?
And so I'll show you another clips where Trump is actively encouraging federal troops, National Guard, and the D.C. police to get violent with people. Like, he's actively encouraging violence with really aggressive, disgusting, violent rhetoric. Here's another clip.
Until you knock the hell out of them, because it's the only language they understand. But they fought back against law enforcement last night. And they're not going to be fighting back long, because I've instructed them and told them whatever happens, you know, they love to spit in the face of the police as the police are standing up there in uniform. They're standing and they're screaming at them an inch away from their face, and then they start spitting in their face. And I said, you tell them, you spit and we hit, and they can hit real hard.
So it goes on like this. And listen, obviously, law enforcement have a right to engage in violence. They has a monopoly on violence, but they should do so judiciously and in self-defense or defense of others. They should not be encouraged to just go around and start slinging punches at people and doing so as hard as possible, right? That's the point. Donald Trump is taking the state monopoly on violence and saying you should abuse this monopoly. You should seek to violently crush people who shout at you, people who heckle you. It's disgusting. And the way he's even describing these things, it's like normally when sane, well-adjusted, non-authoritarian presidents speak of engaging in violence, they do so with really measured language. They do so, with a sense of solemnity, violence sucks. We hate violence. Sometimes we think, violence is necessary for whatever thing. Trump glorifies it. He celebrates it, and he actively encourages it. It sounds like, it's like an aphrodisiac to him. It gets him hot under the collar, We'll continue this clip.
It's a disgusting thing. I've watched that for years, for 3-4 years. I've watched them. Police are standing, and they're told, don't do anything under any search. So and you can see they want to get at it. And they're standing there, and people are spitting in their face, and they're not allowed to do anything. But now they are allowed to do whatever the hell they want. This dire public.
Allowed to do whatever the hell they want. No, I don't think under any circumstances we should tell law enforcement anywhere that you're allowed to do whatever the hell you want. That seems like a recipe for abject disaster, and corrupt abuse of authority and power. That's just fascistic language there. No law enforcement officer in this country or in any country should be allowed to do whatever they want. And again, but Trump feels that way as long as, I should say, law enforcement are not protecting like the United States Capitol from his violent supporters as they engage in a violent insurrection against the U.S. Constitution to try to install him to a second term unelected. Then the police should just like stop, salute, and get out of the way and let his supporters do whatever they want. Here's another clip.
Pam Bondi, who's fantastic, is taking command of the Metropolitan Police Department as of this moment. And I'll be making the appropriate notifications to Congress and to the mayor, our new DEA administrator, who's one of the top in the country. He better be Terry. If you're not, I'm going to get rid of you so fast.
So this is important to note because Attorney General Pam Bondi, who, of course, is a moron and a sycophant and somebody who is not apolitically distanced from the executive branch, which is what we expect of our attorneys general. Yes, they report to the president. Yes, they serve the president, but they're not supposed to do so in a political capacity. Well, we know she does, and she's going to be put in charge of this effort. Here's another clip.
See, this is a tragic emergency, and it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful.
So this is important because, again, he's not only shit-talking his own nation's capital unjustly. Crime is down by like 26% in Washington, D.C. Again, this is absurd, and we'll get to Kash Patel again, kind of like taking the legs out from Trump's entire pretext here. These people are so incompetent when it comes to getting their story straight. But Trump isn't meeting Putin in Russia. He's meeting Putin in Alaska, and Alaska is famously not Russia. Alaska is famously part of the United States, and the United States and Russia are two separate countries. This guy's a fucking moron and the most powerful man on earth, so it's a pretty dangerous combination. Trump recognizes, I think, on some level that what he's doing is really authoritarian and will probably be broadly unpopular, so he tries to like pivot to the greatest hits, even though this is an announcement about seizing federal control of Washington, D.C.'s police forces to crack down on a liberal city. He starts riffing about trans people.
That's why they want men playing in women's sports. That's why they want transgender for everybody transgender. And they just got walloped in an election, in a landslide, and they haven't changed one thing. I saw the other day
What do trans people have to do with you deploying the National? Are you deploying the National Guard against trans people? That's what I'm saying. His brain is mush, and he's like, this is probably going to not be widely well received. So if I just make it about the trans, then people will give me a pass. And unfortunately, I think too often that's the case with right-leaning independents, but we'll see. Trump, of course, in the first clip we played, was talking about how the military, the active duty U.S. troops might be deployed. So here is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth speaking up, and again using very authoritarian, very ominous language to describe National Guard deployment and troop deployment if need be.
And at your direction this morning, we've mobilized the D.C. National Guard. It'll be operationalized by the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, through the D.C. Guard. You will see them flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week. At your direction as well, sir, there are other units we are prepared to bring in. Other National Guard units, other specialized units. They will be strong, they will be tough, and they will stand with their law enforcement partners. This is nothing new for DOD.
Again, it's just the defense secretary saying, hey, not only are we deploying the National Guard for actually no really good reason, no real reason, but yeah, we're willing to deploy special forces if need be. You know, again, kind of like how we put U.S. Marines in Los Angeles just a couple of months ago. Well, we might have to do that in Washington, D.C. as well. Not good.
Our secret weapon here in D.C. is U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. one of the toughest prosecutors and a former judge, and she is going to be talking about juvenile crime, how it's out of control here.
So they're referring to Judge Jeanine Pirro, former co-host of The Five on Fox News, former Fox News host, election denier, lunatic. She was confirmed by the Republican Senate to be the official, not acting, not interim, official U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., which is probably the most powerful and important U.S. Attorney's office in the country. Fox News host. Like Pete Hegseth, Fox News host. Like Tammy Bruce, DOD spokesperson, or Secretary of State spokesperson, State Department spokesperson, Fox News host. Fox News host, Fox News host, Fox everywhere. This is White House sponsored by Fox. Now here is FBI Director Kash Patel accidentally, totally taking the legs out from Trump in this entire farce.
Our children, and the murder rates are plummeting. We are now able to report that the murder rate is on track to be the lowest in U.S. history, in modern recorded U.S. history, thanks to this team behind me and President Trump's priorities.
In other words, crime's been on the decline for years, okay? Especially violent crime. It's a trend that preceded Trump. It began under Biden. So crime was lowering under Biden. It's continuing to lower under Trump. You're flexing about that. You're bragging about that. But also crime is so out of control under Trump, even though actually in D.C. it's dropped by 26% under Biden and Trump. Good, right? You would think Trump would be taking a victory lap over them, trying to say, it's all because of me. So while they're simultaneously flexing about how crime is plummeting because Trump is just so damn good, crime is actually so out of control that we have to federalize the D.C. Metropolitan Police. We have to deploy the D.C. National Guard, and we may have to deploy active duty Marines and special forces on the ground as well. You see how it's a total contradiction? You see how he undermines the entire pretext? Because here's the reality. I say they're incompetent, and obviously there are a lot of stupid people in the Trump administration, like Pete Hegseth, for example. But I think it's also not just a function of stupidity, it's a function of they're lazy. And the reason they're lazy is because they feel a degree of security in the sense like, you know what, we really don't have to be on the same page about this shit. We've just got the power and we can say one thing. And even if I contradict myself or we contradict each other 5 minutes later in the same press conference, like, who gives a shit, really? But there you have it, folks. Donald Trump, for the second time, is deploying the National Guard and trying to federalize law enforcement and threatening to deploy active duty military in a U.S. city for absolutely no compelling reason whatsoever. Is there crime in Washington, D.C.? Yes, there's crime everywhere. In other cities, in rural parts of the country. But crime in D.C. is falling. Now, he might have a better pretext if crime were rising in D.C. Then you would have a more believable justification for breaking the glass in case of emergency. But that's not the case. Crime isn't even staying stagnant. It's dropping. Under Biden and Trump, you would think Trump would be flexing about that. It's all about scaring the shit out of liberals and progressives and Democrats and doing these practice runs about using the National Guard and the military to exert Trump's will. This is another test run. He did it in Los Angeles. Now he's doing it in D.C., and he's hinted that there may be more cities to come. There we have it, folks. Pretty shocking authoritarian stuff. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.